Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving headfirst into some of the most thrilling scientific sleuthing going on right now. We're going to look at how modern physics and geology are finally cracking codes that have baffled scientists for literally centuries. We've got some incredible source material to get through today, and we're breaking down truly mind-bending concepts that challenge pretty much everything we think we know about reality.
So think about this for a second. What on earth could possibly connect a glowing orb of light that just casually floats through a solid glass window, bizarre radio bursts coming from deep space, and the very first spark of biological life on a hellish ancient Earth? I mean, on the surface, they seem completely unrelated, right? They sound like magic or straight-up science fiction. But they are actually beautifully bound by a single thread. They are physical phenomena that seem completely impossible until you apply the right theoretical model.
These are three of the most stubborn enigmas of our universe: ball lightning, the origin of life, and fast radio bursts. Now, FRBs, that's a whole other rabbit hole for another day. For this explainer, we are going to focus intensely on two primary case studies from our source material: the atmospheric anomaly of ball lightning and the biochemical miracle of the origin of life. Both of these demand absolute cutting-edge scientific models to finally make sense of them. All right, here's our roadmap for the explainer today. We'll be looking at nature's greatest unsolved mysteries, the ball lightning enigma, the topological soliton model, tracing life's Hadean origins, the habitable trinity, and why these models matter. Let's jump right into section 1, nature's greatest unsolved mysteries. I really want you to zoom in on the sheer weirdness of our dual focus for today. How does a glowing sphere of plasma pass through a closed window without shattering it? And how does delicate biology spark into existence on a primordial planet covered in toxic oceans and boiling magma? These are extreme paradoxes, and resolving paradoxes requires us to look at the mechanics of nature in entirely new, kind of radical ways. Moving on to section 2, the ball lightning enigma. For centuries, people have reported seeing these luminous spheres, roughly 10 to 100 centimeters across, just floating through the air. And the most baffling characteristics? Well, they last for several seconds, which, by the way, is an absolute eternity in lightning terms. They can penetrate solid materials, like airplane fuselages or glass windows. And they maintain a perfectly stable spherical structure before sometimes vanishing in a massive, violent explosion. Past models absolutely struggled to explain how a floating orb could hold on to around 100,000 joules of energy without just instantly dissipating into the surrounding air.
Now, if you compare the theoretical frameworks, only the newest one, the topological soliton model, successfully checks all the boxes where the others fail. Just look at the plasma, chemiluminescence, and electromagnetic models. They all hit a massive brick wall when it comes to penetrability. They literally cannot explain how the orb passes through glass. But the topological soliton model solves this using advanced quantum mechanics, specifically these concepts of topological protection and wave function orthogonality. Let's actually break down what those terms mean.
Which brings us to section 3, the topological soliton model.
According to the research by Zhuo Li, ball lightning isn't just standard plasma, it's a topological soliton. To visualize this, imagine a really complex, higher-dimensional knotted string. If you try to pull it apart, the knot only gets tighter. The structure is mathematically protected by its topology. Because it has a non-zero topological charge, any disruption from the outside environment has to overcome a massive energy barrier just to untie the knot. That is exactly why the orb doesn't instantly vanish in the atmosphere. It's structurally locked in place. And visualizing this math makes it so much more tangible. On the left here, the exact density and phase distribution shows a 2π winding. That's the knot we were just talking about. Then on the right, the 3D isosurface proves that this equation naturally forms a stable, three-dimensional sphere. It perfectly matches the visual reports of ball lightning we've had for years. The math creates the exact shape we see in nature. But how does it pass through glass? Well, this is solved by wave function orthogonality. Because the internal frequency of this soliton is so completely out of sync with the resonant frequency of a glass window, they barely even interact. Think of it like two ghosts just passing right through one another. The soliton behaves as a coherent wave packet, resulting in a tiny transmission probability of around 5%. It slips right through the molecular lattice of the glass with almost zero friction, maintaining its structural integrity and its massive 100,000 joules of energy.
And what's truly amazing is that this isn't just chalkboard math. Recent experimental breakthroughs by Zhou and colleagues actually generated ball lightning-like structures in a laboratory.
By injecting a supersonic argon gas jet into a localized high-energy field using specialized terahertz waves, they created a stable spherical plasma cavity. The lab tests beautifully complement the soliton theory, proving that this extreme electromagnetic energy confinement is entirely physically possible. So the key takeaway here is that understanding microscopic mechanics solves grand, seemingly impossible mysteries.
And that perfectly tees up Section 4, tracing life's Hadean origins. Let's time travel back to the Hadean Earth for a minute. Our planet formed about 4.53 billion years ago. By 4.3 billion years ago, things cooled down just enough for a crust and a hydrosphere, liquid water, to form. And incredibly, the very first biological evidence of life appears in the geological record at 3.8 billion years ago. That leaves a remarkably tight window around 4.1 to 4.2 billion years ago where early life sparked. But to make that spark happen, the Earth had to provide some incredibly specific and honestly contradictory conditions.
According to the research, there are exactly 8 essential conditions required to drive the chemical evolution of life. You need a reductive gas phase, alkaline pH, fresh water, wet-dry cycles, high energy, and extraterrestrial inputs. But hold on. Notice condition number 3, freezing temperatures. You also need heating-cooling cycles. How on earth do you get freezing temperatures and fresh water on a primordial boiling planet that's covered in a toxic, highly acidic ocean? These conditions are mutually exclusive. They couldn't possibly exist in the same place at the same time. Or could they?
Let's figure this out in Section 5, the habitable trinity.
The answer is actually a massive primordial landmass, a habitable trinity, a coexisting atmosphere, water, and landmass with continuous material circulation. Imagine a huge continent made of early volcanic crust, with localized dikes of creep basalts. Now, creep just means rocks rich in potassium, rare earth elements, and phosphorus. This landmass provided highly localized environments. So you could have a toxic ocean, sure, but inland you'd have lakes of fresh water. You'd have geothermal geysers providing high heat and alkaline environments, sitting right next to high-altitude mountains providing freezing temperatures. The shores of these localized ponds provided the perfect wet, dry cycles. It was a dynamic, totally interconnected geological engine.
And within that habitable trinity, the magic of biochemistry could finally take place. Simple building blocks provided by the atmosphere, water, and nutrient-rich rocks began to combine. Wet-dry cycles polymerized amino acids into proteins for metabolism. Ribose and nucleobases formed nucleotides for DNA and RNA replication, and fatty acids formed lipid membranes for compartmentalization. Because all 8 geological conditions were present in this one localized trinity system, the simple inorganic compounds were naturally driven to evolve into the self-sustaining 3-part system we define as the earliest life.
Wrapping things up with Section 6, why these models matter.
Look, whether we're tracking Bose-Einstein condensates to understand a floating ball of lightning, or analyzing ancient creep basalts to understand the spark of life, we are doing the exact same thing. We are mastering nature's source code. We are decoding how the universe safely contains extreme energy, and we're discovering the literal chemical recipe of how we came to be. These aren't just thought experiments, they are the blueprints for our own technological and biological future.
Which leaves us with this final, really provocative thought to chew on. With researchers already confining terahertz waves to mimic ball lightning, and geochemists mapping the exact chemical cycles that built the first cells, how close are we to artificially recreating these natural miracles in a laboratory? Are we on the verge of engineering synthetic life? Or holding a captive star in a glass box? The models are written. It's really only a matter of time. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep questioning the impossible.